Welcome to the Apeiron Life podcast. Today we have a special guest, Mikael Mattsson. And Mikael, tell us a little bit about your background. I think we've been collaborating with Mikael behind the scene, and we're very intrigued by your background and professional interests. So please enlighten us.
First of all, thanks for inviting me here, and I'm here by mistake, if you will. So a lot of
not here at this podcast by mistake. Here in the Bay Area.
Not here, but here in the Bay Area, and like by accident, and being an entrepreneur by accident, being in physiology by accident, and it all started. I was a so-so athlete in many different sports, endurance sports and team sports. I played soccer and bandy, so basically soccer on ice with a stick. In my early years, and then moved into coaching pretty quickly because I wasn't good enough to reach the national team in any of the sports. And then my background from an academic perspective is in physiology. So I have a PhD in medical sciences from Karolinska Institute. Medical science.
So those who do not know or never heard about the Karolinska Institute, give us a little bit of background, because we are professional, we are aware, but like just give a little bit of background.
So I think the obvious, most important thing is that's the institute that's handing out the Nobel Prize in physiology and medicine. And it is what I didn't know when I started, again, by accident. I didn't have any of the background information. But a lot of the work physiology and the textbook in work and exercise physiology were written there, and a lot of the things you'd open any fitness magazine now, and they would say this is the newest thing, this is the newest trend.
This is great.
Guarantee it was tested in a basement at the Karolinska Institute back in the 50s. So Per-Olof Åstrand and Bengt Saltin and Björn Ekblom, and those were pioneers. So even before that, they got a Danish guy over first, and then started everything. But in the 50s, really started doing work physiology, exercise physiology in a scientific way. So tested all different intervals. So they literally tested, like, is it better to do 20 seconds on and 10 seconds off, or 17-13, or 15-15, and
classic studies.
Measured everything. So very, very.
Isn't it funny, like in all the podcasts that are out now, it's so good. You just gave, Ostrand, Saltine, like a name. Like they never get named.
No.
The podcasters, everybody's like, how important is VO2 max? Let's talk about intervals. They don't even get a mention, do they? So nice historical shout out.
And even before that, so I've seen obviously photos of people handing the VO2 max Douglas bags from a rowboat next to someone swimming. It was a real time doing the test back in the early 1900s. So I'm from that. I got my degree there. I wasn't supposed to do any PhD or anything. I was supposed to do one semester at Karolinska in physiology. So kind of broaden my coaching experience to have some academic. So I did some psychology and some stress management, and then I thought you should do physiology as well. And then it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And apparently I was decently skilled at it. So I got more and more opportunities. And Åstrand was still at the Karolinska at the time. So he was approaching his 90s. And he was still telling us youngsters what to read, and came in for Tuesday lunch and told us things that we missed to read up on.
Yeah, incredible.
So with that background, I felt pretty comfortable. I didn't know what the level was, because that was the day-to-day life. And then I got opportunities to, I should say, because of them. The kind of stamp in work physiology, exercise physiology is so great. So I had open doors everywhere. Not because of me, but because of them.
The reputation.
Yeah.
We should probably say too, it's Sweden, like just in case we didn't.
We didn't
really say. Yeah,
that's right.
We know. So the people are probably listening to your accent and they're thinking, "Oh, is he from North Carolina?" And no, it's
it's all over the place now. But the base is Swedish.
Yeah, which is incredible.
And then I with that, I got the opportunity to visit and work at different universities around the world. So I've been at Columbia in New York, I've been here, and then Kyoto and Tokyo in Japan, and to name a few. And then this was the best place. So Stanford University here. So I moved my research to Stanford. It's almost 11 years ago now. Yeah. And coming here, again, accidental entrepreneur. I didn't have any idea about the startup world or any aim to go into that. But you're kind of weird if you're at Stanford and don't have a couple of startups.
Isn't it great? I love it.
Yeah. And then the planets aligned more or less. So I've been working with elite athletes for, it's coming up on 28 years now, and then been in research for 18. Moved here 11 years ago, and then around 2015 or so, all the big tech companies wanted into health. And the group at Stanford under you and Ashley is Precision Medicine Group. So combination of cardiovascular medicine, genetics, biomedical data sciences. My work in the early days was part to test new technologies and break them and see what was good enough to use in a clinical setting. And then with my physiology background, kind of that intersection with all those things, it turned out that not many people are in that space. So you would have, even in sports, you would have some practitioners, and then you would have the academics. And been a clash there between the sports practitioners. They need to take everything into account. The scientists need to be deep enough to be relevant, and to be deep, you need to be narrow. So you had a clash there. Yeah. And then you add the clash between sports and data science, and not that many people have deep understanding of both. So we felt like, hang on, what we've done in precision medicine and what we've done in translating what the coaches are saying to the scientific world and translating what they're saying to a computational world, we can be pretty successful in this little niche. So we started Specs as a spin-out from Karolinska with one of my colleagues, Philip Larsson there. He's still a professor at the Swedish School of Sport and Health Sciences, and Stanford, so the Precision Medicine Group with you and Daryl Waggett. And said we had a pretty strong idea of where we could be, what we should do, meaning that we knew that we were sciencey people, not that salesy. So we should stay away from front end. We should work on back end. We should deliver algorithms to other people. We knew that we shouldn't do any hardware. We should stay in software. We shouldn't try to go directly to end users. We should do it the way we wanted it, and where we could be successful. We also had pretty strong ideas of doing something that we could be proud of. So we usually use the story as if we wanted to just make money, we would go into starting a sports genetics selling tests to kids company. Yeah. Because that would be, everyone would buy it. Yeah. It would be crap. Not true, at least for now. Yeah.
Scientifically crap.
Scientifically not.
A business, they'd probably use you in Stanford Business School as a role model for identifying a market.
So then instead we went into algorithms and trying to, what we're trying to do really in company, this Vexa company, is to calculate what's optimal for each individual in each situation, in every situation, and take everything into account, but in a scalable way. So all the data that you have now, how do you use that for you? Not for 10,000 other people, not for some textbook knowledge.
For example, if I'm an active individual now, and I record everything on my Apple Watch, you can basically tell me, I see that you do that and that. If you want to be better, let's say aerobic capacity, maybe add this and that, something along that way, or how? Yeah. Explain it a little bit.
So first of all, you would have all the gadgets. And in the early days when we started with this, so we had the same idea 18 years ago when we started to develop algorithms for scalable individualization. But back then you didn't have any data. Right. We had like heart rate monitors. If you were lucky, you would have a power meter from a bike. And then you would have spreadsheets, maybe not even spreadsheets, like early days of spreadsheets, but handwritten notes and all of that. But then we could create individualized algorithms for heart rate intensity zones. Right. So you guys here will know that, well, the 60, 70, 80, 90% of heart rate max, that's pretty convenient. It's a nice story, but it's good enough for group average. But an elite athlete can go 95% without being tired, and someone just starting could go 70, 75 and start to get tired. So then we could create algorithms that from your data, from your heart rate data, could figure out your individual zones. And then over the years, you got more and more gadgets, more and more data. So it moved from a problem with, we don't know. So the coaches would say, yeah, we know that sleep matters. We know that nutrition matters. We know that travel matters, but we can't measure it. So we're just going to wing it or go by feel. It's a nicer way of putting it.
Yeah.
And then somewhere around 2012, 2013, you started getting a lot of the GPS tracking for team sports. And a few years later, you got more of the wearables. So the watches came and became better and better. And then over the last maybe 5 to 10 years, starting getting a lot more things you can measure. And you mentioned Apple Watch. Apple Watch is a great example because it still only gives you the numbers. So you get a ton of metrics.
Without recommendations or...
No recommendations. And also, how would your sleep affect your VO2 max based on your training session today? You don't know. And what time of day is it now? And how strong will you be at 5 in the morning compared to 5 in the afternoon? And from a textbook physiology knowledge, we know that, well, it's got to be 10% difference at least. And we're not taking that into account.
Yeah.
But with all the revolution in computational sciences and capability, you can actually, that's not a problem anymore. You can get all the data. You can do the calculations. So usually use an example, it's a lot of data, it's a lot of variables. On the other hand, when we work in genetics, you would have 6 billion data points per person, and you need 10,000 people or more in a study for it to be relevant.
Right.
So it's not that much really in sports and physiology. It's you can handle it.
So when we first met you, and I was talking to you about this company, Spexa, you described it as like an intelligence layer, and that really stuck with me, that there are companies that are collecting data, i.e. Apple, Garmin, Polar, there's Aura, there's a lot of them. And then there's also groups that are coming up with really kind of glossy UI, UX, beautiful reports, really nice engaging features, but the layer of intelligence that takes the data and helps you create a meaningful report, like you said, that area seems to be lacking. And you tell us a little bit about how you built up your team to try to handle that intelligence layer, because they're unique skill sets. And as we've gone through who you're hiring, it's like a really unique team that you've put together.
Yeah, so we can take one step back even from that. So the reason why we do it that way is that all the founders have been involved in startups before. So for you, and this is his third startup, the first one is NASDAQ listed and whatnot, obviously Stanford professor. Me and Philip had worked in Sweden with a lot of companies that had the idea or the business savviness. So they could be engineers that had a new solution, so they wanted to build a hardware, but most of them didn't have any physiology. So then they looked around, and Sweden is a small country, so where are the physiologists? So, okay, let's talk to these guys. So we had seen successes and failures in many companies before, several companies at least, and seen that one of the biggest issues was that you had specialists. So you had the engineers, they had some knowledge and they had a hardware prototype or something, but they didn't have the business savviness and they didn't have the physiology. Or you had the people that were business savvy and they saw an opportunity and they could hire engineers, but they didn't have the rest. Or you would have someone coming from sports and they would have the problem, they understood the problem perfectly, but they didn't have. So that was like, okay, this is an issue. And then we had another issue of one of the early companies we worked with was a precursor to the Apple Watch, if you will. So they were the first ones that did heart rate through a wrist with light, but they were super small and super early. So they got eaten when the big ones came along.
Yeah.
But they had engineers, so great engineers, but they had no idea about the biological data. So for them, heart rate was just a number. And we were testing and validating what they were doing and seeing, what works, there's some issue here. We can't quite figure out what it is. And then had to dig deeper and deeper and deeper into it. And for them, as I said, heart rate was just a number. So a heart rate of 400 was not strange.
Yeah.
It took us forever to find that bug and say, well, you need to have it within these constraints, otherwise it's not true.
Yeah.
So we said, well, we then need to have people with dual competencies that could talk across the
disciplines,
across the disciplines, which was also obviously a very prominent problem in academia. You would have people sitting next to each other working on the same problem from different angles and not talking to each other.
Yeah.
So we had that experience as well. So we said, that's not going to happen. We need people with dual competencies. So we need practitioners or good athletes that are also engineers. So we might have someone that did a lot of work at, we have, for example, someone that worked 10 years at Microsoft and then transitioned into being a strength and conditioning coach for national teams in team sports. Someone else used to be a Wall Street trader and then moved into cross-country skiing coach. So there's dual competency. So we have athletes. We have one of the most prominent athletes now. He just broke. He crushed the Swedish national record in half marathon. So obviously great athlete. He's also an engineer and analyst. So he used to work at a bank and do algorithms for fraud detection.
This is great.
We could steal him.
I love this. Yeah.
And then what it does is it solves the first problem there.
Yeah.
Obviously, athletes are great at delayed gratification and working through problems and seeing the end goal. They're also knowledgeable about the data, so they know what they're working on, and they can bring something else to the conversation. So we have people that come from the banking industry or from the stock market. We can kind of steal their algorithms and apply it to a biological system.
Yeah.
So fraud detection for heart rate monitoring, for example.
Yeah.
So everyone with a heart rate, using a heart rate monitor would see some of those recordings are off.
Yes.
Now we can detect that they are off and discard them from the analysis.
Yeah, they're outliers. Yeah. Yeah.
So with that, we said you need at least dual competencies. So you need an interest in sport, health, fitness. You should have whatever is required for you to do the job, but you should also have something else to bring to the table.
That's so cool. Yeah.
So that's been the approach, and I think we've feel free for everyone to look at the team list, and we have a bunch of those.
So tell us a little bit. We have just before we started recording a little bit of conversation about obviously some of the fear from AI, from coaches that it's going to replace them, etc. Do you want to give a little background on that, and then maybe some solution or how you guys augment or make coaches even better?
Yeah. There's a couple of things to unpack there. The first one might be that, well, we get some comments from our investors from time to time, and asking, you didn't say that you're an AI company. And for us, that's obviously we're an AI company. We've worked with AI since we started, and
even before ChatGPT.
even before ChatGPT. And it's kind of a lazy term to use. So we might have 7, 8 different AI models in every solution that we have. So for us, it's more like that's electricity. Not everyone will work with electricity, and you will use it different ways if you want to light a lamp or charge a car, but it's still electricity. So it's going to affect everything. And I think we're moving towards that, but now when it's a hype, so ChatGPT hype and taking over the world type thing, it's not a good way of looking at it. It's not nuanced enough in our way of looking at it. So obviously you get pushback from coaches. It's something new. They're going to say, I don't want my job to be done by AI.
All right.
That's a problem. And then you will have to invest in understanding what it can do, what it can't do, as a coach or as a trainer, to figure out where you can be augmented. So I think we will hear that in the upcoming years, that how can you augment the coach? How can you scale your business? And that is one of the things that we've been working on from the beginning, and saying that you're not going to replace the humans, but you don't want humans to sit and go through spreadsheets for 2 hours to talk to someone for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
If an AI can do that in 2 seconds,
Yeah.
or less. I think it's the AWS, when they talk about the NFL schedule, one of the ads that they use, they say, this used to take weeks for humans to put together the NFL schedule. It's being done in parts of seconds now. It's a great example.
Yeah.
It's not going to be better, and you can redo it. So you can say, I didn't like that thing. So then we run it again, and then that thing is changed. What we are very keen on pushing for is that augment people, augment the coaches, augment the trainers, augment the knowledge, but also you need to direct the AIs. So we've seen quite so many examples of brilliant scientists going into human physiology, biology settings, and then running the AI models, just throwing AI at the problem.
Yes.
And it's just slightly off. The aim is slightly off, and then it's exponentially off. So I think one pretty mean example, but fun for people that are knowledgeable, is there were great AI researchers that got the hand of pro cyclist data, and they were trying to predict performance and trying to, how do we make them better? How do we make this Tour de France team better? And they ran all the models, and they figured out that the best thing that they could say, the best predictor of anything, was if you want to predict the heart rate 5 seconds earlier was the best predictor.
That's super helpful. Not.
It's completely true.
Oh, it is, but it got almost irrelevant. Yeah.
So they spent, I don't know, weeks, months on that, just slightly off.
Yeah.
So understanding that this is a spurious correlation, don't worry about it. It's obvious it's going to be there. Take that out. Go for the next one. Go for the next one. Go for the next one.
Yeah.
So again, combination of the domain expertise with the AI computational data science competence is going to make it much, much better. And I think I think you have encountered that, and we have encountered that the coaches they used to get burnt by scientists coming in and saying whatever they were working on, this is the most important, this is true, go for this.
Yeah.
And a couple of times the coaches would listen and they would go for it, and it was absolutely true, but they forgot about all the other things.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a circle back to Apeiron, your question, what do we do and how can we do it? So that's a big thing. What's the most important for this individual now? So as an example, we work with some national teams in different countries and different sports, but you can have a small data set. So let's say that you have your training data, you have the sleep data or nighttime data, so you have all the metrics there. You could have the subjective ratings of how they're feeling, how they're experiencing the situation, and then maybe a glucose monitor. So you have something on nutrition, something on sleep, and something on objective training load, and then some subjective. And with that, it's pretty straightforward, pretty simple. But with that, you would have a couple of hundred variables that you measure, and then you would have thousands and thousands of correlations between that. So it's, even with 4 gadgets, it's too much for a human to handle. So then you can say, well, I'm just going to focus on these things. I'm just going to look at how many minutes did you train?
Yeah.
Which is what they used to do. And that's super crude.
Yeah.
So now we can calculate both on each individual thing. So we can say, well, you respond better to this type of training. So we're going to model and we're going to give you more of that, let's say high intensity. You respond well to high intensity, you respond better to threshold training, and you respond better to volume. Because the coaches, the best coaches, they know that already. So they would say, this athlete, I've worked with them for 5 years, they cannot tolerate too much volume. But it takes them years and years to do. And we can see it from the data now.
Yeah, that's really
and then we can do the same thing with sleep, let's say, and say that, well, your sleep, you have very stable sleep. Don't worry about it. That's not your problem. You can sleep wherever you sleep. You take extra deep sleep when you need it and whatnot. As long as you sleep more than 7 hours, 10 minutes, you're good. That's not your issue. And then someone else would be that, the analysis is that, well, if you go to sleep later than 10:30, you will have 2 days that are worse than it could be.
Right.
And then you need more than 8 hours, 45 minutes to get to your optimal. Yeah. Or if you train hard, you need to add an extra 2 hours of sleep, or whatever it might be. So that's interesting. And then you could have the same with glucose is getting there now. Not just this is your glucose, but also how do you respond to different things?
Right.
So
And all the individual differences. I mean, you should try just for a bit, Eitan, you're right in the middle of this. At Apeiron Life, it's interesting because our team has not come from the health and wellness industry. So, and your team has not come from necessarily sports science. No. And yet, I think it's really exciting, isn't it? When you get different perspectives coming together, trying to solve old problems potentially in new ways.
Yeah.
But for you, Eitan, like as we've known Mikael for well over a year, we've done a couple projects with him. As you see these software solutions, this like generative AI, this is like software is starting to say for the client you're working with, Eitan, you used to program out, I want to do this for this month and this for this next week. And now all of a sudden software is coming in and giving you prompts and suggestions. Does it feel scary or does it feel exciting?
I think just first of all, the story that you gave about one person can respond to high volume and the other one, I just thought in my head, my background, as you know, is in judo. And I always give that story of two champions that one was really good response to heavy lifting and the other person was a high volume female. She had to run a lot. She had to do a lot of other things and the outcomes were the same. And it did take me a long time to figure it out until we actually managed. And it took me years, working with them. So that I can totally relate to that. And secondly, now we collect a lot of data and we do so far a lot of things still more in a manual way. So I think all the interaction with outcomes of combined data points would be absolutely incredible. So, and it's hard to eyeball it, and you can see trends here and there, and you can sometimes see something going to happen, but you got to watch 20 people at the same time. It's pretty hard. So,
yeah.
So I think that's the next layer that we do. So you would be able to calculate that and find out you respond well to that, or to that. Can't tolerate an apple, absolutely not, but need nutrition to be very, very well controlled. Yeah. But then to sort all of that and pick the top ones, because people can only handle so many things.
That's right.
So these are the 3 things that would be the most important for you. Yeah. And it might be that, well, you need to eat more late in the evening because your blood sugar is dropping in the early morning hours, and therefore you wake up and therefore you don't get the recovery. We'll take care of that by one thing: eat a little bit more later in the evening. Or you are terrible, you take hours and hours for you to get to your peak in the morning. So if you have a competition at 10 a.m., you need to be awake for a long time, and you probably need to do some time shift and train early, whereas someone else, it's perfectly fine to wake up at 8 and then peak at 10. And with that comes the fear from the coaches that we talked about before, that they are going to be replaced. Some of these things we can calculate. Some are just philosophy and style. So then we've created AIs that mimic specific coaches.
I was going to get to this. This is really interesting. I definitely want to go into this one a little bit more. This is great. It's all like scaling personalities, essentially.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So some things, as I said, you can calculate. You can calculate that this person is responding poorly to an apple, or you can say that this person responds well to high volume training.
This is an apple you eat, not an apple you wear.
An apple that you eat. Yeah. I'm saying apple because it's a kind of standard test to what happens if you eat an apple compared to a banana.
Right.
What happens if you eat the apple with vinegar, something like that. And then you can look at the spikes of your blood glucose. And those things are right or wrong. But then if we can calculate, you need to do 5% less today. How you do that?
Yeah, there are many ways.
Many ways. Yeah. You can say, let's say that the 3 most common ones would be either you just continue as planned, and then you take a rest day later. So you go a little bit harder, you're going to be a bit more tired, it's fine, you're going to have a rest day on Saturday. Or you can say, we're going to do it at the same intensity, we're going to keep the intensity, but we're going to do a little bit less. So we take off the last interval or the last rep in the strength training. Or you can say, we're going to do the same structure of the session, but we're going to do it less or a little bit easier. So we take away 3 pounds of the weight, or we take away speed. And all of that, and also how you program. Some coaches would say, I always do 3 days training and then 1 day off, and then 3 days training, 1 day off. Another one might say, I do 3, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1. Might be for people that program do training programs understand that maybe. And again, that's just style. It might be that you have specific things that you are set on. Like you should do a hard running session 10 days before your half marathon or marathon. And all of that can be programmable if you know how to do it. So we started creating, the first AI was a swimming coach, a Swedish swimming coach that worked with the most decorated swimmers in Europe, so Sara Sjöström and Therese Alshammar.
So this is like a digital twin of the coach.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So after a bunch of iterations, so the first couple of times it was like we looked at all the sessions that he had prescribed to people, and then we started with an avatar for that. And then it was like, no, I would never do that, or I would never do that. We're missing parts of the understanding. So he would say, but that is a sprint session, and you programmed it for a distance swimmer. Yeah, but you didn't tell us that was the thing. Or it could be, this session I would only do for backstroke. Right. So again, iterations, and then figuring out, again, the domain expertise in not just running
some
the
people
AIs.
will say, they'll go, why even try to create a digital twin? Why even try to do it? He's like not a magician, but he's like an artist. You'll never be able to fully recreate him. But if you can recreate him to 95%, all of a sudden, this approach to helping people improve their swimming performance is scalable around the world.
Yeah.
Everyone can access it.
Yeah, so imagine
versus a swim squad of 20 people.
And then you can tell also if it doesn't work for you, maybe you can change coach.
You could, yeah. And the part that I really liked is that, structurally you could load up 3 swim coaches with different personalities. Structurally, none of them want to hurt you. Structurally, all of them want you to have your best swim on the right day.
Yeah.
But personality-wise, some are they're gonna give you off days, but they're gonna hit you with hard days. Others are gonna be like, I want to see you every day.
Yeah.
So those are the personalities that come through.
Exactly, and scale it up and down.
Yeah,
which
this
is
is
obviously
great.
not. If we take a top athlete, they know what they have done, so they know their style and how they are working. But they, at least most of them, wouldn't be able to scale that down to someone trying out for a marathon and doing 4 times a week or 3 times a week. And we can, again, with our domain expertise and textbook physiology background, know those things. So we can take this style and scale it up and down. And now we've got to the level of putting injury risk in there as well. Yeah. So you can set that, I want to run a marathon under 3 hours. And I want to do it whatever it takes. And then we can say, well, it's going to take you 12 sessions a week over a year and a half. And it's going to be super high risk of injury. Or you can say, if we're going to do it safe, it's going to take you 2 years. Right. But you want to do it at Boston Marathon. So theoretically, we can make you that program, but it's going to be extreme injury risk for that. Yeah. So don't do it, but this will be the program.
This to make it like really practical, like some of the folks that will be listening to us, I think one example that might be interesting, because a lot of the lessons learned and a lot of the clients are around elite sport, and it's great because its performance is the outcome, so it becomes like, let's help you perform better. You worked with us with a client, and I thought it was a really fun twist of the capabilities of AI and this kind of generative programs, where it's an individual who wants to remain healthy, and he's going to travel and he's going to socialize, but he also really wants to do a triathlon, and so he has to swim, he has to run, he has to ride, And the way you guys were helping us out is to say, live your life, have your fun. And when opportunities open up for you to train, we'll help bump and guide you on the most important thing to focus on for that window. You only have 2 weeks and you're 8 weeks out from the triathlon. You should ride your bike,
Yeah.
Maybe talk about that a little bit. Like, it's not always just about performance, is it? Like, these approaches can start to bleed into aspects that, Eitan and I are working with a lot about health and wellness and fitness and function through decades of life.
So the way we've built everything is that we needed to, when we started, to be agnostic to what gadgets the data is coming from. And with that, we had to obviously do a lot of harmonizing, because a sleep metric from an Apple Watch is different from a Garmin watch, is different from an 8 Sleep and then Oura Ring. So that's one level. And then it's easier. We started with elite athletes because they are going for a specific goal. They have a lot of data and they have a pretty controlled environment. So from a mathematical perspective, that's easier. And then went into recreation athletes. They still have a goal, so they train for the marathon or personal best in bench press or whatever it might be. They have also data, not as much, and they have noisy lives. So we need to take that into account. The pilot that we did with you, it's noisier. So they have a lot of data, kind of a noisy goal and noisy life.
Yeah.
Which is
it's fun. It's
great.
A fun life.
Yeah, absolutely. But our approach has always been take the knowledge that we can scale from the elite athletes and bring it down to democratization for everyone. You could scale. You could have Michael Phelps as a coach, AI coach, I should say, even if you're just starting out in your master swimming, or we could optimize as easily for getting rid of pre-diabetes or lowering your blood pressure.
See, this is amazing.
What we're working on now is the coaches that you guys do the manual. So if I prescribed you to do this strength training session today and you did a golf round instead, okay, what will happen with tomorrow? And that is it's a way trickier problem because you have many different vectors of the problem, if you will. So a coach, a trainer could quite easily say, well, you trained your arms today. It's fine to train your legs in the afternoon, or you did this thing, and then next thing you could do, you did the golf round. You can do some high intensity, shorter term biking now. That's perfectly fine.
Right.
But then the training load is not one metric. It's many different things.
Yeah.
So how tired are you in your upper body today, or this muscle group in this type of intensity? And then how do we optimize that for health so that you do all the things that you need to do and fill the gaps, if you will, and be adaptive. So that's what we're working on now, making sure that it can be adaptive for every situation for everyone. And that is a very intriguing problem.
Well, I know, like you worked with us on a couple of projects, and one with Eitan and his team put together resistance training programs. You guys have established some ways to do this through software, through AI-based techniques. But as you worked with us, you're saying you have to train the models. You make the model and then you train it, like you said before. Like you still need Eitan and the team to say, I see where the computer's taking it and it's close, but I definitely wouldn't do that, and I definitely do that. As they give feedback, the model gets stronger, right? Yep. You're training the model. So the humans are helping the model get stronger and stronger for the purposes that will be applied. But then again, once you get it, I mean, how many people are you training right now, Eitan?
15.
Yeah, what if you could train 15,000?
Yeah. And also I wanted to ask, also past history of injuries can play into the model, I assume. I mean that's something that like eventually I could say, oh, this person has acetabular impingement in his hip. Hey, how are we going to modify? Okay, squat, we're going to do quarter squat, half squat, all kind of really neat interventions that you can do with all kinds of things.
So what you're describing now, for us, that's an intermediate step. So taking strength, for example, strength training, that's a pretty constrained problem. You have a finite number of muscles and so finite number of exercises that can be done. And then you have constraints in terms of I'm injured in my ankles, so I can't do these exercises. Or I want to go for beach body, upper body focus, don't worry about the legs, whatever it might be. Or you as a coach might say, well, we have imbalances left, right, or back is weaker than the rest of the body. So we want to prioritize that. And we're at the level now where that can be done. So you can have all of that and it's done in seconds instead of you having to spend the time to do it. Yeah. And also with strength training, for example, it's always improving now with the technology so that you can get the data back automatically from the systems instead of having to do it manually. We want as much as possible to be ambient. So for endurance, your watch will tell you what you did, the distance, the speed and everything. You don't have to worry about it. And then we can get that data. So next level will be when we get all the strength data automatically. We can then use that, and then you just kind of turn the dials and tweak it a little bit. I want more arms, or I want more legs, or I want to do it this way or that way, or I want this style of coach.
I can just see, we've talked about this before, Eitan, I can just see a scan of what your body looks like now, and then there's 3 or 4 images of what your body could look like, and you decide which one you want to go for. You're like, that one's just chiseled. That one there is highly functional. This one has no pain, and this one is very time efficient and it's super healthy. And you pick the one, and the program then can help generate to get there. I thought maybe one way to close out, because this topic we could go for a while, but I thought a fun way to maybe close out is for you to tell us, Mikael, about with more and more AI opportunities, AI coaches becoming available. How would you caution listeners or health enthusiasts or fitness enthusiasts if they're going to embrace or engage with like an AI coach? I don't hear many people talking about cautionary notes. What would you tell people to maybe watch out for before you pay your money and start following the AI coach?
Yeah. So first of all, the changes are super quick. So if you compare ChatGPT 3 to ChatGPT 4, much better, much cleaner in terms of guardrails and what it's saying. I have so many examples of everything from people writing that I'm about to commit suicide and ChatGPT saying, sure, go ahead, I'll help you with that. So
so scary.
To being really smart about it and what to do and link to the right things. And where we're now, the generative is it's a vehicle. It can only give you what data it's trained on. It's not going to be better than that, meaning that you would get the most common response for that question. That's how they are built. So that's if you prompt it with more things that are more like you and more data from you, it's going to be better, but it's still going to be the most common response. And it's going to be very, very convincing and confident with that comment.
I love that. Yeah. There's no doubt, is there? Maybe, sort of. Why don't you try this a little bit?
Yeah.
Get back to me tomorrow. Yeah.
So for us, it's important to talk a little bit about learning and having the system learn from you. That's a reinforcement learning, machine learning technique, which not necessarily got anything to do with the generative and ChatGPT example. So those are different. So ChatGPT would be it's a nice interface, a vehicle to deliver the information. So for example, what we would suggest or do is that you have your data being in the intelligence layer. So you actually have your data being analyzed. And then you have the layer of the specific coach. But it's no reason now why that coach couldn't be a voice and video avatar. So you actually talk to talk to Apeiron, you talk to Michael Phelps, or you talk to Khalid Khanuchi, who won
You
4.
can talk to Eitan with whatever accent you want. It could be
Yes.
French, Icelandic, Swedish. Yeah.
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 But then you have that as a vehicle, and it's going to be a conversational
Yeah.
with the right data, so
Right.
fed with the right data.
It's almost more the UI, the user experience
Yeah.
side of it. It's not the back end calculations driving it.
But with smartness, so that it would pick from the right things.
Right.
And it would be smart enough to, let's say that you have a training plan laid out, and you say, I don't want to do my strength training today, I want to go golf. Or I don't want to do my strength training, I want to do something in endurance. What can you give me?
Mm-hmm.
And then it can pick from the knowledge that's there. And you can do that in a conversational manner, the way you would do with a coach. We're not quite there yet, but with the speed of things happening, that's gonna be not too far into the future.
I think I've seen a couple little blogs, and Apple has Fitness Plus and Nike has their Fitness Club, and the discussion about how soon will it be before they will not be humans showing you the workout routine. They'll all be avatars that will be moving. They'll look so much like humans that somebody will be writing out the programs, maybe an AI, and then the avatars will pop up and they will be administering them, and the humans will have guided the whole thing and trained the thing, but they won't be doing the thing.
Yeah.
Which is super interesting.
I think in terms of democratization, and you can also, with that setup, have the avatar be exactly like you. So a lot of the videos that are showing libraries of show you the exercise are well-trained Caucasians.
Yeah, who are very mobile.
So,
Yeah.
so imagine that you automatically get your ethnicity, your gender, or the one you want,
Yeah.
and also with the body composition as you,
Yeah.
and maybe the constraints, so that you have your problem with your knee, or you can have only this angle in your knee.
Yeah, that's great.
And then the avatar would do the exact same thing, but it looks like a real human.
No, I love it. I love it. In closing thoughts or
Closing, no, we're looking forward to see your company growth and the future integration in the market.
Yeah.
And I just want to end with I just saw a quote by the guy that wrote Sapiens, Harari. Do you know that guy?
No, I
He's like,
don't.
and he said like, everyone talks about like the danger of AI, but no one talks about the danger of human stupidity sometimes. Like that's what we need to worry about more.
Isn't that good?
So Yuval Noah Harari is his
Okay.
name. He wrote the book
Yeah.
Sapiens. So I saw that quote. I thought it was brilliant for
Yeah.
like today's conversation. Everyone is worried AI is going to take over the world. I'm like,
Yeah, there's some pretty dumb things
yes.
humans are doing.
Yeah, so,
yeah.
anyway.
I love that.
Perfect.
Yeah, thanks for coming by.
Thank
Michael.
you
That was
for having me
great.
here.
No, really enjoyed it.
Take care.
Me too.
All right. And thanks, Donnie.